Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. The Dr. Mundo rework has been revealed, so let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and hop right on into it and start talking about what exactly has changed about everyone's favorite madman. Now, Dr. Mundo's kit, I've already been through a little bit, and it has so many really powerful abilities here, and I really think they did a good job on not only keeping him simple to play, but also really giving him some room for skill expression and some different ways of playing around with his theme of being this sort of unstoppable, tanky, it will not die juggernaut. So let's go ahead and hop right into his passive here, which is called, fittingly enough, Goes Where He Pleases. Dr. Mundo resists the next immobilizing effect that hits him. He loses a percentage of his current health and drops a canister nearby. If he picks up the canister, he recovers a portion of his maximum health and reduces the passive's cooldown. Enemies can step on it to destroy it. Additionally, he did keep a smaller version of his old passive where he gains bonus health regen based on its maximum health. Now, this ability is nuts, and I can't emphasize this enough. This already means that, like as shown, Jace Thundering Blow, Quinn Vault, Cannon Stuns, none of that matters to Dr. Mundo if he's walking at you, right? Like, oftentimes in lane, Dr. Mundo will land the cleaver, he'll start walking at you, and then Quinn vaults away, or Jace bashes him away, and Dr. Mundo's just kind of sad and has to go back to farming. This ability means that Dr. Mundo, if he can land that cleaver and starts running you down, there's nothing you can do about it if his passive's up. He will just straight up say, I don't care. And Dr. Mundo then has the ability to pick up that canister to get some of that health back as well. The percentages are actually already on PBE, so if you take a look at the health he loses versus the health he gains, Dr. Mundo will actually recover more health from picking up the canister than he lost as a result of this ability. Now, I believe you generally end up breaking even depending on how much damage you took from the ability that procced it. So, like, he loses 7%, but he gains 8%. So, you're going to break about even by picking up the canister. But especially given all of the other health that Dr. Mundo can regain as a result of his kit, he doesn't care too much about picking it up. Sometimes just the CC ignore is a big enough advantage for Dr. Mundo. So, this is a super powerful ability. It does have a counterplay. Obviously, you can hit him with something and then prevent him from picking up the canister by stepping on it or just by zoning him off of the canister. He can't just walk at it willy-nilly, especially given that he did lose a bunch of health in a burst from you CCing him. But just the fact that he does get to periodically ignore a crowd control ability is super strong. And I'm glad this is sort of a development that Riot had been working on for a while back with the Volibear rework, where they wanted to have him convert all hard CC into soft CC. They moved away from it, but this is more or less the next iteration of that ability, so glad to see it stay in the game in some form. His next ability is Infected Bonesaw. This is basically just his cleaver from current game. It did receive some changes. It will no longer heal him if he kills a unit. It no longer refunds the totality of its cost as long as it hits a unit. It does need to hit a champion in order to refund its full health cost. So it does mean that if Mundo is spamming it and just hitting minions, he will lose health on that exchange, though of course he has the bonus health regen from his passive to sort of make up for lost ground. Generally speaking, I'm a little disappointed they kept the 30% current health upon cleaver hit. I think that's just a ridiculous number. Like, you can be a tank, you can have 10,000 health, Mundo hits you with a cleaver and you lose 3,000 off the bat. He hits you with a skill shot, that's a 4-second cooldown, and slows. Like, I don't really like that they kept that, but in general, they were going to keep cleaver. I knew that, and they did nerf it in some regard, so I'm happy with where that's at. And to be fair, it is a skill shot. It can be body block, all that kind of thing. So I'm not ultimately super upset with where this ended up being. Mundo's W is Heart Zapper. He basically creates an AoE where he deals magic damage to nearby enemies. At the end of this duration, or when he reactivates the ability, he unleashes a secondary explosion that damages enemies again. Now, the key to this ability is he gains gray health while this ability is active based on any damage he takes, and at the end of this ability, as long as he hits a unit with that final burst, he will restore a percentage of that gray health. If he hits a champion with that final burst, he will restore all of the gray health he gained from this ability. This is crazy good, and it combos with the rest of his kit in quite a powerful manner due to the AD he gains based on missing health. Dr. Mundo can turn this on in the middle of a fight, deal constant magic damage to nearby enemies, while dealing a ton of damage based on the health he's losing because he's in combat, right? And then at the end, he can pop this ability to then gain back all of that health. And yeah, he loses out on some damage, but that healing he's going to get essentially makes it so that, yeah, you spent all this time and energy trying to kill him, and he got all that health back. And that's crazy good. Now, the biggest thing here is, of course, there is counterplay. If he doesn't hit at least one unit with this burst, he gets none of that health back. So there is sort of the counterplay in he can't just turn this ability on and soak up all the poke you're sending his way, right? He has to have a unit to hit with this ability to get even a percentage of that health back. And if he can't hit a champion, champion with it, he's not going to get as much healing back as he might have expected. So there is some degree of counterplay to this, but I like where it's at as it combos well with Dr. Mundo sort of manipulating his own health bar for fun and profit, either healing a ton to keep himself topped up, or reducing his health in order to gain the benefit of his missing health damage that he gets from his E. So I kind of like how this ability plays with a lot of what Dr. Mundo wants to do. Dr. Mundo's E is Blunt Force Trauma. He passively gets bonus AD based on his missing health, and when he activates it, it's an auto attack reset. He deals bonus damage based on his missing health, up to 60% bonus damage, and if the enemy dies, he whacks them away and deals this ability's minimum damage to all enemies it passes through. Now, this is hilarious. This technically gives him a little bit of extra poke through the wave in a similar fashion to Scion's Roar of the Slayer, where he can bellow a minion at you and deal damage in that regard. Now, the distance he whacks looks significantly smaller than Roar of the Slayer, but it still does give him sort of two ways of poking you, either hitting you with Cleaver outside of the wave or hitting you with Blunt Force Trauma inside of the wave by last hitting. Now, the biggest thing I'm curious about is if this works on champions. The ability tooltips that I've read all seem to just say enemy, so my guess is this works on champions, but this has some really hilarious implications then, like whacking away a Scion as the last hit, and then his zombie resurrects like a distance away from you, so you have some space to make before he actually revives and tries to equalize the scales. Whacking away a Karthus as he dies, so his ghost appears further away from you than it should be, so you're able to get away scot-free. Like, there's some kind of fun things to think about. Obviously, you have to last it, so I'm not like, this isn't like a crazy good strategy or tech or anything, but it will come up more often than not, I have to think. Now, the biggest thing here is that, of course, because all this damage scales with his missing health, Dr. Mundo doesn't necessarily want to be at full health all the time, but it does mean in the middle of a fight, like I said, he can turn on W and walk at you while he's taking damage. He's getting more and more damage himself, and then if he needs all that health, he finally reactivates the W, he gets all that gray health back, and he's able to finish you from there. It's sort of a fun gameplay loop here, and I kind of like where it's at, without making Mundo significantly harder to play, right? This is an auto attack reset, Cleaver is just a basic skill shot, like W's the real thing that requires a lot of thought process to use properly. So, and remember as well, he can get his health lower himself by taking immobilizing skill shot effects and then popping off that canister and then not picking it up. That's 7% of his max HP every time that happens. So he's able to sort of reduce his health at the same time and get bonus damage from this ability. So that's kind of nice. Mundo's R is now called Maximum Dosage. It basically works the same as it did before, except the biggest thing here is there is no startup health cost, and in fact this ability gains him health upon activation. He instantly heals 20% of his missing health upon pressing the button. He also heals then a percentage of the maximum health over time, gains bonus movement speed and AD while healing. The biggest thing with me about this ability is that this is more of a go button now than a survival button as it used to be. Beforehand, you kind of hit this button and everyone sort of understood, unless you have grievous wounds, we're never killing Mundo, so just ignore him, right? Now, because he gets bonus AD based on his maximum health, like, you can't just ignore this guy. Like, if he's got Titanic Hydra, he can and will kill you, especially if he starts getting low on health and gets that bonus damage from Blunt Force Trauma. Like, this is going to be a crazy good steroid for Dr. Mundo, on top of the fact that he's just regenerating a ton of health. Now, to be fair, the overall health regeneration is reduced. Even if you factor in the 20% he gets right on the activation, he's still only recovering up to 90% of his maximum HP as opposed to 110% on live. So that's still going to be enough where in a vacuum, Mundo will hit full HP by activating this ability, right? Like, recovering 90% of your health, like, you're going to get back to full health if you're not taking any damage over the duration of this ability. That being said, he's still going to be very difficult to kill in teamfights, but not as hard as he was before because the percentage is just different, right? He's going to get a bunch of that health off the bat, but then he's only getting 70% over the duration, which is not nearly as much healing per second as you may be used to. I think that's more than compensated for by the AD bonus, though. So in general, I do think this is like a net improvement on this ability. It's a little worse in regards to its teamfight usage, but especially if you're just pressing R off cooldown in lane to sustain yourself, you're gonna be in a fine spot. And it's still a low cooldown. There's no cost associated anymore because it just gives you that 20% right off the bat. So Dr. Mundo will still be very difficult to force out of lane. In general, I do feel like Dr. Mundo is in a really, really fun place, in a very interesting place, because he's going to more fully embody the sort of, you know, I can't die, super health tank juggernaut, right? And I do feel like because he lost the stacking MR, he was going to be gaining off of his W. He's a lot less about, or not his W, his E. He's a lot less about the sort of hybrid tank juggernaut where he's really hard to kill, but also he just doesn't do enough. You know, he's kind of ignorable. Like, that's the biggest issue with Mundo, is because he has no crowd control. You can build him tank, but also then he won't do enough damage to matter. Now his kit is very much so refined towards, I am going to do a ton of damage. He doesn't have easy ways in, but also once he gets in, Dr. Mundo is going to be absolutely terrifying because he's going to be healing a ton, he's going to be dealing a ton of damage, he's ignoring your crowd control every couple of seconds because of his passive. Like, that's crazy good and going to make Mundo, like, sort of really, really difficult for a lot of champions to deal with, especially if he gets ahead. Like I said, because of his passive, he ignores a lot of the sort of CC abilities of champions that play in that lane. He just gets to straight up ignore it. I think it'll be funny to watch a Renekton try to dash on you and get the damage off with a stun. Do the normal Renekton combo where you dash, you W, you Q, and then you dash away before they can retaliate. Dr. Mundo can just leave, right? Like, Renekton dashes on him and tries to stun him, and Dr. Mundo just walks away from Renekton, which is kind of a funny thing to think about. Or he retaliates immediately, right? Because he's not stunned. He's still hitting you. So he can even take the stun and walk away to get his canister while Renekton is still in the animation of his stun auto attack, right? Like, there's some kind of fun things that I'm waiting to see if it pans out the way I want it to. And that's kind of the thing with Mundo, as I feel like he's gotten a lot more interesting to play with this kit. Obviously, I haven't played it yet, so who knows, but it feels like there's a lot more going on with him and a lot more to think about and a lot more decision making with Dr. Mundo right now as per on live, right? Versus, you know, keeping W on for more damage versus activating it to get the heal right away. Or, you know, maybe not getting a heal at all because the enemy dashed or flashed away from you before you could pop the ability, and so then you got no healing back as opposed to a bunch of healing. Or, you know, being able to know you're going to take a ton of damage here to get bonus damage from your E and then rely on that massive healing you're going to get from your R. Now, Mundo is still going to get countered super, super hard by any Grievous Wounds, especially given that a lot of Grievous Wounds item can now give up to 60% Grievous Wounds, which would really shut down Dr. Mundo if he's trying to go for low health shenanigans, right? Like, he gets super low trying to count on his W to heal him, but then he hits the threshold for the 60% Grievous Wounds from Chainsword, and then all of a sudden he's like not going to heal at all from his gray health, and he's sad, and then he's dead in that order, right? Or anyone who takes Ignite top lane. I disagree, you should do that, but if you do take Ignite top lane, you do have the advantage of being able to just slap that on him whenever you need 40% Grievous, and Mundo will heal a lot less, right? So there is still a good amount of counterplay to what this champion wants to do, even following the rework. I think the biggest thing for me is I feel like he's not gross enough. Which sounds like a weird thing to say, especially if we look back at his default splash art, right? Like, that is horrendous. But I feel like they could have pushed the sort of creepy zombie mutant crazy guy angle a little bit harder, but really, I'm nitpicking at this point. I think they did a really good job of maintaining Dr. Mundo's comedic factors on top of his sort of horror factors, because this guy does essentially perform live surgeries on unwilling participants, right? Like, that's terrifying. I dislike that entirely, while at the same time making him a bit of a tragic character, because the whole point is he was supposed to be this Zonite enforcer who was thrown in here basically against his will for no crime other than he's a bit clumsy and not, you know, a bit dim, but otherwise a good guy, right? And then all this happens to him, and all of a sudden he's just this horrendously scary dude. I like the fact that he named himself because he read his name tag upside down and didn't know what it said anymore. So there's a lot of fun things I think they did with his character design. Like I said, I think they himboified him a little bit, but ultimately I'm not altogether that upset with where the Mundo rework went visually. Gameplay-wise, I'm really, really excited to play it, which I didn't think I would say at all. Old Mundo was just super boring. There wasn't a lot going on with him. This looks like a ton of fun. So anyways, let me know what you guys are thinking of the Dr. Mundo rework down in the comment section below, especially if there's any interactions or things you can think of that may change how Dr. Mundo feels. You know, let me know all that down in the comments. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, and especially if you know any of these sort of interactions that I may be forgetting about. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.